Thank you. Thank you. Well, this is very humbling. Very humbling. You know, thank you to each and every one of you to come and sit in here and have a listen to what I have to say. Thank you very much. And I just want to say, before I say anything else, anybody from the Ute Nation here?
Yep.
Anybody from the Ute people? Can you put your hand up?
Right back there.
Right back there. Kia ora. I'm a Maori, so kia ora, and thank you for having me on your land.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
So glad to have you.
I looked at that thing and I was going, wow, did I play all those roles? You know, it's funny. Sometimes I think about this career and the roles that I've got to play, and I have to remind myself, just watching a flashback like that, to think about the 10 years or so of being with great production crews and having really great characters to play with, you know, and yeah, that was a.
Well, you've done so much. You have such an interesting background. I'm so excited to have you here because we can talk about this. I bet you most people don't know this. Let's start back here. Let's talk about rugby and ballet. So.
Yeah, I had a choice. When I was 17 years old, it was a bit of a Billy Elliot kind of scenario. I had a girlfriend at the time who was a ballet dancer, and she got me involved in ballet. And at the same time, I was trying out in my high school years for the national rugby team, and it ended up colliding the selection for the Australian rugby union team for schoolboys, which I was meant to try out for, and a performance of Swan Lake ended up being on the same weekend, and I had to make a choice. And to be honest, I was the only dancer they had in this ballet production, and I had to, lift the swan around and do all that sort of stuff, and I had to choose that over the rugby. And I tell you what, when you're facing, 15 big rugby boys, and you're saying, guys, I can't be there this weekend, I have to dance in Swan Lake. Can you imagine if Slade had turned around to Oliver and said, hey kid, I'm doing ballet this weekend.
Do you still dance?
I danced in Spartacus. When I was in that arena and I was having those wonderful gladiator battles, I have to say that the dance skills that I had really came in handy. As a matter of fact, for those of you who are Spartacus fans, any Spartacus fans? Yeah, so the fight that I had against the guy called Octus in Guards of the Arena, he was an Australian ballet dancer, and I remember coming out into that arena. I remember thinking, we're not going to fight, we're going to dance. And I remember he was like this, with his spear. And I remember I had to play it down. I was kind of like going back in time. I was coming back as Crixus with the long hair, and I was going like this, But it was all this dance, and then he came flying toward me, and I had to drop with my shield and go bang. And I remember he did this long jeté in ballet terms, where he ran forward and he jumped up in the air like this with his spear, and they went into slow motion and the phantom camera. Like this, and I dropped down, and I tell you what, that fight scene, if you watch it in terms of movement, was extraordinary, And I remember just thinking to myself, like, nobody's going to know this, who's watching this, but we're two ballet dancers moving around in this arena.
That's amazing. We talked a while ago, I remember you told me the most amazing story about a bully. I think he bullied you as a schoolboy, and you used that, right, for Crixus?
Oh, the bully. Yeah. When I was in high school, my worst enemy in high school, right, there was a guy called Matthew Sisley. Hey, Matt. He hated me. I didn't know why, but he just hated me. And he would come up to me and call me a whole bunch of expletives, at the time I was dancing, I was also a break dancer, and he'd walk up and go, You know, you this and this and blah, blah, blah. And him and I were always, look, you know, you want to deal with this? Let's go to the park after school, you know. We never actually came to blows, but we were always up against each other. That year when I was in school, I was unfortunately involved in a car accident, and my mother was killed. And I was thrown out of the car window. A lot of people ask whether these scars on my face are makeup. You know, I play so many action roles, they think that I get these scars put on me. But these ones are real. We got hit by a drunk driver. The car spun in the air. I got hurtled out the side window, a small side window. I went headfirst out that. My father survived the accident, and he got out of the car. Unfortunately, my mother was killed at her side of the car. He got out of the car and looked for me, and he couldn't find me anywhere. This drunk driver got out of his car going, it'll be okay, mate, it'll be okay. My dad almost killed him, but he turned around and he saw me, like, probably, you know, I've been to the site and I was probably over where the exit sign is. So I flew that far through the air and hit the ground. A policeman later told me that I should have smashed every bone in my body, so it was a miracle that I'd survived it. But anyway, I was in 2 weeks in a coma from that. And I remember being in this situation. I remember almost dying, you know. I remember passing out and thinking life is gone. That's it, I'm dead, you know. And I went to blackness. When I woke up in the hospital 2 weeks later, Matthew Sisley was standing next to my bed, my worst enemy. I then found out that he'd lost his mother when he was a kid. I didn't know why he was angry with me at school. You know, I was the kid with the gelled back hair and could do break dancing and had a beautiful mother, you know. All of a sudden he heard the news that I'd lost my mother, and it touched him so much he came to the hospital. And I woke up to him and his story. And when I then learned that he'd lost his mother when he was a kid, I realized why he was so angry, because I was the kid that sort of had everything. But when it was taken away, I became just like him. We both have the same scar now in our lives. I was best man at his wedding. Yeah, incredible stuff. I based my performance of Crixus and Spartacus, the moment that I read that storyline, I knew that was the storyline I wanted to play. You know, and you know, the very first scenes where I'm with Andy Whitfield in the bathhouse. Andy Whitfield in the bathhouse, and I walk up to him and I'm Crixus, you know, the undefeated, and I walk up to him and I say, you know what your wife has been, and I say all these. There's too many kids in here for me to say the next few lines that are regular on Spartacus, but I walked up and I spat in his face, the way that Matthew Sisley used to spit in my face. You know, he used to come up and go, you know, and I played that. About 3 weeks into filming, my producer came up to me and he said, Manu, what are you doing with Crixus? Everybody hates him. We're getting letters from fans saying, kill Crixus off. He's an arse, you know. You've got to go into a love story in the next episode with a girl called Navia, and people aren't going to follow that romance because they just think you're a big arse. And I said, good. I said, Rob, good. Because I learned this, and this is my mission in life, I think, that your enemy is not your enemy. That those guys on the other side of the world we call terrorists, they've got something that they do, but they're not really, if you understand deeply their souls and where they come from, really, if you dig deep, they're not your enemy. And I sat in the pocket of Spartacus, and I have to say that the writers enabled us this journey to sort of keep on pulling Andy Whitfield, and then Liam McIntyre, him and I apart to the point where we said in another life we could have been as brothers, all these great lines that enabled that brotherhood. And yeah, that was kind of the whole premise of that character journey was based upon that. And, you know, in the end, I was pretty proud of it, because I think in the end, you know, if I had to take any anything away from playing Crixus. It wasn't the battles. It wasn't those scenes. It was those moments of introspection when you're trying to understand people around you to the point that you open yourself up to understand them. And I think Crixus made that journey to the end. Unfortunately, Naevia didn't make the same journey, and she wanted to kill all the Romans. And I followed her into that battle. But you know, just wanted to share that story with him. That was Crixus.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Manu. I appreciate that. We have some questions. Go ahead.
Okay, so I was wondering what the meaning of the Maori forehead greeting tradition means.
Where are you?
I'm right here. Hi.
Right up front.
Oh, come up.
Oh, okay.
Let's see. Can you come over to here? How do we do this?
Just run up the ramp.
Yeah. Let's go to the
next question.
Hi, I love Spartacus, and I feel like it really pushed the boundaries of violence and sex on TV. And I was wondering if there's ever any time during the filming.
Somebody went, woohoo! That's a real Spartacus fan.
If ever during the filming you kind of thought like, oh, this is a little too far, this is too graphic, or this is a bit much for a storyline.
You know what? I remember walking into the studio one morning, and how many kids are there in here?
Quite a few.
I'm going to try to G-rate this story. A character came on to the show and his whole story was that he was going to be well packaged. And Alithia was standing up in the pulvinus when he was paraded onto the field with all the new gladiators. And they kind of exposed themselves, and everyone went, woo! And this particular character later on went on to try to kill Spartacus in the bathhouse. And I came in and fought him and stopped him from killing Spartacus. And then as a result, he was crucified. But before he was crucified, they decided in the storyline that the certain thing that was his asset would no longer be there anymore. And I walked into the studio that morning, and it was just the fighting square where the gladiators would train. And there was the crucifix where they were going to put him up on it. But there was something on the ground, and I saw our DOP was standing there going. And I walked over and I said, hey John, good morning brother, what's going on? And he went, I think we might be pushing it too far. And on the ground was the prosthetic python, whatever, I don't know. I'm trying to keep this out of kids. I'm sorry kids. We're talking about Spartacus, your parents will explain it later. But so there were these moments where Spartacus was constantly pushing it. I mean, I could tell you some classics, but there's kids here. Initially we got ribbed really badly by the critics, who said it was just a bloodbath and just a gore fest and too much sexuality and all that sort of stuff. As the characters progressed through the seasons, and you started to just sort of understand that this was kind of the behavior at the time. I've been to the Colosseum, brother, and stood there in that incredible stadium, that was made just to entertain people, with the crucifixion of Christians with lions and stuff like that in the middle of the arena for entertainment. This was a very, very tough time, and we have to address it, because we aren't that far away from history repeating itself in parts of this world, so at least it was a series that went about sort of not creating PC borders. And we kind of broke the way for like Game of Thrones, Game of Thrones, Vikings, all these series came after Spartacus. And I'm proud to say that as a New Zealander, with a bunch of New Zealanders over there in the Southern Hemisphere, that we sort of kicked the ball off on that sort of run of historic epic series, yeah. Did it push it too far? Yeah, but you know what, brother? They did push it that far, that long ago, yeah. The hongi. Okay, the hongi is a Maori welcome, and I think people should do it all around the world. I think this is one of the most beautiful things we have to offer as Maori, which is the Polynesian part of New Zealand, the Maori. Okay, so when we meet each other in New Zealand, we do a thing called the hongi. Now, what it is it's really the sharing of the breath of life. And so, what you do, and I'd like you to try it, if you'd like to try it with the person sitting next to you. Okay, turn and face the person sitting next to you. Everybody, face somebody next to you. I can see that guy looking at the guy next to him going like, yeah, face him, because man to man, I'm telling you, this is a beautiful way to share the energy of life. Give it a go. Be brave. So what you do is you touch foreheads and noses, and then you both inhale, and you're sharing the same breath. I'll show you. How many people tried it?
I want to try it.
Kia ora.
By the way, it smells delicious. All right, our next person, go ahead.
Alright, so mine is about the Arrow, because Deathstroke was the best character hands down, you can't argue that. But did you enjoy playing Deathstroke and his kind of self-serving double-crossing personality?
You know that Oliver injected me with the Mirakuru. People tend to forget that. Remember Slade was sitting there, like after everything he'd been through, half his face had been blown off, he was sitting there, he's going like, I'm going, kid. I'll see you later. He went, Slade, I've got this Mirakuru. I'm going to inject you with it. You ready? I went, okay, here goes the new episode. Starling City, here I come. To be honest, like I said to you before about playing the enemy and trying to find the morality in a character, I've always played Slade with the most moral consciousness that I can. Even when he's doing, like when I got the script and it said, Slade drives a sword through Moira in front of his kids. And then I'm in the middle of that scene and Moira's, you know, the lady, the wonderful actress playing Moira, you know, she started adding lines like, turn away kids, don't watch children, my children, you know, and stuff like this. And it was a really, really difficult, harrowing scene to play. And everybody played it beautifully, you know, Steve did a really beautiful job. You know, you could just feel the scene was of like, I don't know, it was a Shakespeare tragedy sort of moment, you know, and you know, I think that was the most challenging time when, as Slade Wilson, I was doing something, and even in any depth of his consciousness, he was going to follow through with this. But I'll bring up the conversation I had a minute ago about over the other side of the world, you know, there's videotapes that are made that this sort of thing happens. And the conviction that goes with that is tough and horrible and ugly, and I had to live through it in that moment as Slade Wilson. And I remember trying to think to myself, how can you hold on to anything in a moment like this other than resentment, anger, hatred, all those dark, dark qualities? And I didn't like to have to play that character at all. I thought the next convention I went to, every woman was going to beat me with her handbag. And I remember being able to deliver the line, which was the one saving grace, where I said to her, if only your son had the courage that you're showing, something like this. It was this kind of line. And then I did it, and it was like it was a horrible, horrible moment for me, you know. But it was a very huge turning point in the arc of Arrow, you know, and it worked effectively, you know. Strangely enough, I went to a convention about 2 weeks later, and this woman came up to my table and she walked straight up and she went, "What you did to Moira was despicable." But I still like Slade. And you know, and the only reason that I can even imagine that she said that is because of the sensitivity on the island when Oliver and I were, when I was like his father figure, trying to help him out on the island. We're just trying to survive, you know, teaching him how to use the sticks and teaching him how to survive and going, oh kid, you know, you're going to be toast until we got to the point where I think you're ready. To the point where we, you know, we pretty much saved the island. And then they threw a screwball in my direction on the storyline and they said, you're in love with Shadow. And I remember at the time acting with, you know, with wonderful actress playing the Shadow character, and I was like, really? And they said, yeah, we're going to make it a love triangle between you and Steve, and we're going to make you peer through a bush at them sort of getting together, and you're very jealous. And I was like, oh God, here I go down. So excuse my language, but here I go down that path of no return again. But all I could think was to play it with a degree of reality, you know, just sit there in the bush and imagine that, you know, I had some affection for Shadow, you know, and then that kind of led into a kind of a sort of Shakespearean tragic thing where, you know, I thought that Oliver had killed Shadow, and these convictions came on. Anyway, just because we were going to get to some other people, all the way through it, I was just, especially this, I met Marv Wolfman, and Marv Wolfman, you know, gave me a few heads up on how he'd written Slade Wilson, you know, and the intentions that he had, and none of the comic book character things really tied into how dark and evil they'd made him in the television show. So I was always trying to hold on to some morality so that somehow Slade Wilson could be redeemed to be the Slade Wilson Deathstroke that is in the Marv Wolfman world. You know, and I really fought for the opportunities to try to keep him in that moral circle somehow, so that in season 6, when I walked out of the prison cell, and I said, hey kid, the mirror curtain went off. It was like I can remember it, but it's just like a nightmare. You know, it's like, and everyone kind of went, what's going on here? And then Oliver was like, Slade, you know, I know you're looking for your son. I think I know where he might be. And I was like, my son, Joe? And he's like, yeah, I need you to help me get my son as well. And I went, you and me again, kid. Just like old times. And it was like all of a sudden everything in the middle just vanished. And we're kind of, not everything, but you know, they gave us this chance to rework the earlier relationship. And you know what, I really appreciated that from the writers. I appreciated that they gave Slade that kind of reprieve and that return. Unfortunately, you know, or fortunately, because, you know, I hope look, listen, here we go. I hope Joe Manganiello makes a frickin' kick-ass great Slade Wilson Deathstroke in the film. That's my total take. Joe Manganiello is a really great guy. I've met him a couple of times. Amazing physique. And when he puts that outfit on, you know, I really wish him the best. No, I do, but unfortunately, as a result of that, you know, we can't continue the television storyline, you know, for a while. I don't know what's happened, but you know, hopefully at some stage we'll get back there, because the storyline that they started taking me on, Slade, you know, going after his family, you know, that's a really interesting part of the Marv Wolfman universe for the character. So who knows, you know, maybe after the movie comes out there might be a little...
So we're out of time, but before we finish, we have to talk about this. I think you were a little character in a movie called The Hobbit. And you also voiced his, for a Lego video game as well. And, oh, you did the Lego video game. Just for, in the movie, The Hobbit, you took this tiny little part in the book and you made it this huge, massive character in the movie. How were you able to develop that character so well?
To be honest, I was not the one selected originally to play Azog. They chose a 7-foot guy and they dressed him up in all this cumbersome stuff. And he was an actor, but he was more of a physical sort of actor, you know. And I actually went to high school with him, which is another story altogether. Go figure. This guy, they called him Bones. He used to walk around school like this, like 7 foot tall, like, you know, and be kind of picked on. And then one day I saw him in the middle of the square, and some guy was picking on him who was from a year above, and he suddenly with his big long arms he went, and this guy hit the ground. A bolt of lightning came from the sky and hit him in the head, and he went. And I was sitting with my mates, and I saw the whole thing. Jump forward 15, 20 years. I'm doing Spartacus, right? And I got flown by Peter Jackson down to Wellington to try out for Azog. And I actually thought, oh, maybe I've got a chance at this role. I get back up, I'm doing Spartacus again, and this actor's brought in to play this character, Sedulus, big German guy. And it's my friend from high school. And I said to him, hey bro, you know what, you got to come over to my house for dinner. So we're all sitting there having dinner at my place, right? And he says, oh, I just got a phone call from Peter Jackson's office. I just landed a role. And I went, which role? Stop eating my food. The King of the Orcs? Azog. Yeah. Get out of my house. No, you know what the most embarrassing thing was? That I always regret not doing this. I didn't tell him that at that point that I'd auditioned for it. I felt like, oh God, because it was like I thought that I was in for a run with that, but he got it. But the problem was that he was he had to wear a big suit, and he was like in a makeup chair for probably 8 hours. You know, imagine having to look like Azog with makeup. You know, but the problem with the makeup was that, you know, just, it doesn't move, you know, like if you remember Lord of the Rings, if an orc came onto the screen, it was like, So Peter decided, you know, like in a stroke of genius, but only 3 months before the premiere, that he was going to get rid of the performance because it was all shot on green screen, and he was going to bring somebody down to shoot in motion capture. And they went back over their tapes and they said, oh, you know, Manu did a really good job, and with motion capture we can make him that big, right? And so I got flown down there and, you know, literally given the script at the hotel at 11 o'clock at night, 7 o'clock in the morning I was going, and Peter's sitting there without any shoes on going like, yeah, go my Manu, yeah. And I'm sitting on this thing going, Manu, what is this thing? And he goes, it's a wolf. I'm like, where's the head? It's over here. So can I scratch its head when I'm in this scene? And we just played around with the role, you know, and just, but you know, it was a very unique opportunity to work with Peter Jackson, and blew my mind when we went to like the London premiere, and it was like, or the LA premiere, and it was just, you know, it was a big moment in my career that I got to stand next to some pretty famous and amazing actors and some really talented people. And anyway, I'm out of time. Listen, I don't know whether I've ever stood in front of this many people in one hit, but it just means even more. I'd like to just say thank you. You know,
Everybody, please give a huge round of applause for Manu Bennett.